Thank you very much for joining me in this video. You know, there were three men in a luxury yacht in the South Pacific. One was a Brit, one was from the United States, and one was a Newfie. And I apologize if I'm offending him, but I hope I'm not. Love Newfies, but that kind of fits with the joke. You have to bear with me. So a storm came up, and the yacht capsized, and they were washed up on a deserted island in the South Pacific. Now, exploring the island, they found a stream, and they were able to get fresh water to drink. It had coconut trees where they could eat coconuts, but there was nothing else. There was nobody else they could interact with. They had no radio, they had no television, there were, of course, no stores. Day after day, the same existence. The sun shone, the water washed on the shore, and they were on this island. Well, it got pretty tedious, pretty boring for all of them, and they didn't know what to do. One day they were sitting on a log, looking out to sea, and they were hoping they could see a ship come by so that they could flag it down. But day after day, no ship. This particular time, the one fellow looked down, and he saw a bottle that had washed up on the shore. He got up, went over, and picked up the bottle, pulled the cap out to see if there was anything in it. Some mist came out, and out came a genie. And then Genie said to them, "This is your lucky day. You each get to make one wish." Well, the American started. He said, "You know, I come from Central Texas. I'd never seen the ocean. I wanted very much to see the ocean, to spend time in the ocean. I don't care if I never see the ocean again in my life. I want to be back home to Central Texas." Poof, he was gone. Then the Brits said, "You know, we get lots of sea around England, but we've also got lots of dampness, lots of rain, lots of cloud, overcast. I wanted clear skies and sunshine, but I've been baking out here on this island, and I've had enough of sunshine. I want to go back to merry old England where I've got the overcast and the dampness. I want to go home." Poof, he was gone. Well, Newfie sat on the log, looking terribly dejected, looking out to sea. The genie said, "What's the matter?" He said, "I'm just so lonely. I wish my two friends were back here." Careful what you wish for. You know, from the time we're little, we learn to wish. When you're old enough to blow out the candles on a birthday cake, you're old enough to make a wish. And we continue all through life making wishes. New Year's Eve, we make New Year's resolutions, but it's been around a wish, what we wish for the new year. And we always continue to wish. And you know, so many wishes center around money. And it makes a lot of sense. If we just had enough money, we could pay our debts. If we had enough money, we could buy that dream house, we could buy that fabulous car, we could take that vacation, all kinds of things we could do if we just had money. Back in the 60s, there was a regular weekly television program called The Millionaire, and it was based on that same concept. The one character was a guy went by the name of Michael Anthony, and he came out and he said, "You know, for years it was my privilege to work for my employer, John Beresford Tipton." And he explained how John Beresford Tipton, from time to time, would arbitrarily pick somebody, at random almost, and give them a gift of $1 million anonymously. And with the cost of living, that would today would be about $12 million. And then he would follow the life changes, see how that money impacted their lives. This went on week after week, and NBC got inundated with letters from viewers who thought this was a documentary. And they would write in and say, "Would you add my name to the list of potential recipients?" Some would say, "Well, I don't even need $1 million, it could be 100,000. They didn't realize it was just a story. But imagine if it was real. Imagine what you would do if somebody all of a sudden brought into your life $12 million unexpected. But I want you to reverse it. I want you to imagine that you are the John Beresford Tipton. You are the one who's going to be giving out that money, and you're going to be impacting people's lives. Imagine the impact you could have on somebody's life by giving them $12 million and watching it happen. It's wonderful to be able to have that kind of an impact on someone's life. But you know, we do in our day-to-day life if we so choose. I'm in real estate, I think most of you know that, and I work with a number of realtors, 100 or so realtors. They're in real estate, and our job is to find people their dream home where they can develop their lives, where they can, their children can go to school and meet friends, where they can meet neighbors, and that'll one day be the homestead. And it's our privilege to do that. When I first moved to St. Catharines from Hawkesbury, for the first 6 months, I lived in an apartment because the house in Hawkesbury hadn't sold, and so I hadn't bought a house here. And one day, I was getting in the elevator. I was on the 8th floor of this apartment, And one floor down, the elevator doors opened again, and a tall gentleman, I'm 6'4", he was 2 inches taller than me, stepped in. I'm not an A personality. I tend to be somewhat quiet and reserved. I'm a bean counter. But I stepped out of character. Put my arm out, and I said, "Hi, my name is Wayne Quirk. I've got 7 floors to find out why you're a tenant, why you don't own your own house." Well, he said to me, "You know, I'm single, I don't have a family, and I really don't need a house, and the apartment satisfies me okay. I've saved up some money. I'm thinking of buying a car." I walked with him across the parking lot. Anyway, the upshot of the story is that the next day we went out and he bought a house. So years went by, and maybe 15, 18 years later, I'm in my office, and this man comes in the doorway, and he's 6'6". And I don't have a great memory for names and faces, but I happen to remember him. He said, "You remember me?" I said, "Yeah, you're Steve." He said, "Yeah." He said, "So many years ago, you sold me a house." He said, "Now I'm married with a family. I just came from the bank. I made the last payment. The house is mine. And the first thing I wanted to do was come by and thank you for selling me that house." Had an opportunity, have an impact in somebody's life, and make a difference. And we, every day, as we rub shoulders with humanity, have an opportunity to make a difference. We may not have the resources that John Beresford Tipton had. We may not be able to give out $12 million at a shot, but we can all do something. 3 or 4 weeks ago, my wife and I were in San Francisco, and we were on Market Street, and we decided to go to the Nordstrom Plaza and go down to the food court for a bite to eat. So we went down to the food court. We're sitting there munching on a bit of a lunch. A young fella came up and asked me if I had some spare money for him. Well, I kind of brushed him off. I'm normally receptive to this type of thing, but I'm always leery about whether or not they're going to buy drugs or something. And I thought, how dumb is that? Right in the middle of a food court. He was sitting 2 tables over looking pretty despondent. So I called him. I said, "Come here for a minute." So he came over, and I said, "Are you hungry?" And he said, "Yes." I said, "Well, go buy whatever you want, and I'll pay for it." So he didn't have to be told twice. He jumped up, bought some food, some fries, some pop, whatnot, sat back at his table. How much did it cost me? Actually, it didn't cost me anything because my wife went over and paid for it. But the interesting thing, I watched him sit down, and the first thing he did was he bowed his head and thanked God for the meal. How cool is that? Now, probably by the time he was hungry again, he forgot about that incident. But I remembered it because it gave me an opportunity to be blessed. It's always more blessed to give than to receive. For years, the guy next door to me where I live, a guy by the name of Al, a bit of a recluse. He and his wife split up. His kids had grown up, and he kind of separated himself from them. And he lived by himself. And I was always worried about him that maybe something could happen to him and nobody would know. From time to time, he would come over and we'd sit on the front porch and we would talk cars. He always had a real interest in cars. And one year at Christmas time, my wife and I were out shopping, and we saw this great big, I call it a Santa sack. It was a great big thing that tied with a large white cord on the top. It was all decorated Christmas designs. It looked like something Santa would throw over his shoulder. And I thought about Al. I thought, just for fun, my wife and I bought the sack, and we went about to fill it. We went to Costco. You always find lots of interesting things at Costco. And we went to a Home Depot. We went to Canadian Tire, store after store. Bought him soap, bought him candy, bought him novels that I'd read, all kinds of things. Wrapped them all. By the time we were finished, this thing was just bulging, and I could hardly lift it off the floor. Christmas Eve, I went over and knocked on his door, lugged this thing with me. He came to the door, and I said, "Al, there must be a mistake. I think Santa dropped this off at my house by mistake. It's got your name on it, so I didn't want to hang on to it. I wanted to bring it over here." Well, nobody was allowed in this house, but he let me come into the foyer. I lugged this thing in, shook his hand, and wished him a Merry Christmas. Off I went. The next morning, Christmas morning, I'm enjoying, fantasizing about what's going on in Al's house this Christmas morning as he goes through this bag of gifts, opens them up, and thinks about them. He and I talked 2 or 3 times after. I never mentioned it again. But less than 3 months later, he was dead. And I thought, if I hadn't done it that Christmas, I'd have lost the opportunity to do it. I'm glad, because it blessed my heart. When I was a student going to university, my first year, and housing was tough to come by. My first year, I lived in a basement. It wasn't a basement apartment. There were 2 bedrooms. There was a little notch in the wall with a hot plate. There was a laundry area, and there was a 2-piece bath, and that was it. And I often went home for weekends, but if I stayed up for a weekend, my weekend involved sitting in my bedroom that I shared with another guy, either sitting at a chair or lying on the bed. There was no TV, nothing to watch. That's what I would do. But when I went to church one time, a couple, Elmer and Jean, came up to me and said, "We'd love to have you over at our house for lunch." Well, I went with them. I enjoyed a wonderful home-cooked meal, chatted with them, visited. They had a television, and they said, you want to have a nap, whatever you want to do. Spent the afternoon. It was delightful. And from then on, anytime I was there for a weekend, it was just expected that I was invited and they'd love to have me over for lunch. And, you know, years and years later, I think back on what an impact that made in my life. What a difference. I'm sure they would have been happier to just have them, their own company at lunch, but they reached out to me and they made a difference. And I think back over my life, how many people over the years have reached out and made a difference in my life. You know, I really, really wish for you in the upcoming year, 2024, that all your wishes come true. I wish that you have blessings galore. But there's a principle I want to share with you that can help this happen. It's called the principle or the law of sowing and reaping. And it says basically, whatever a man sows, he also reaps. And we feed our nations and we feed our families by this law. If we take a grain of corn and we put it in the soil, a stalk of corn will come up and there'll be cobs of corn, multiple from the seed we put in. Same with wheat. Put it in and it'll grow a stalk, and on that stalk will be grains of wheat, and always what you plant and multiple times over. Zig Ziglar, a motivational speaker, said, you help enough people get what they want and you'll always end up getting what you want. The Bible says, give and it'll be given unto you. Pressed down, shaken together, and running over shall men give into your bosom. For with the same measure that you meet, it shall be measured to you again. The principle or the law of sowing and reaping. As I said, my desire for you is 2024 be a year of multiple blessing to you, that a year that all your dreams come true, all your wishes be fulfilled. Got a little card here, and on the one side it says, I make dreams happen. That's my challenge for you this year. Reach out, make dreams happen with your family, with your friends, with your neighbors, with strangers that you rub shoulders with. On the other side, it says 2024, the year my wishes come true. Put this on your mirror and remind yourself that your goal this coming year is to make dreams happen. Look for opportunities in the year. Look for opportunities every month, every week, every day, and they'll be there for you. And you'll find as you do that, 2024 will be the year that your wishes come true. You may not be able to afford the millions of dollars but John Beresford Tipton gave out, but you'll have opportunity in your life continually to make a difference. Reach out and touch people, and you'll be blessed. Thank you very much for sharing your time watching this video, and I look forward to talking to you again next week.